Hi everyone, a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for all the people joining us from all different time zones. So, the topic that we will be covering today is around traumas, and also we will be covering four different trauma responses, right? So, instead of breaking it into four different, parts that I had already decided, what I will be doing is I will be putting all the different type of trauma responses into this one single video for you all to go through it, and then find about your own trauma responses. All right. So before even we get into the trauma responses, I would first want to discuss a little bit around what is trauma, and then we'll be getting into that part. Okay. So what is trauma? In a very simple language and a very simple definition, trauma is any sort of uncomfortable feeling, any sort of overwhelming feeling that you feel inside you. Okay, it could be any sort of emotion like hurt, rejection, loneliness, that feeling of unloved, that feeling of hurt, feeling low, feeling envy, all sort of insecurities, all sort of fears, then anger, shame, guilt, sadness, abandonment, unworthiness, resentment, distrust, etc. So you call it anything, any sort of emotion that is creating any sort of uncomfortable feeling inside of you, that is what it is called as a trauma. Okay, now traumas are very personal. Okay, so when I talk about personal, what I mean here is two people experiencing the same situation or witnessing the same situation will experience or might experience different kind of emotions inside them. Okay, for example, let's say you and your sibling are witnessing a fight, a conflict happening between your parents. The one sibling could be like, nothing is happening, he's not bothered, and he's like chill and everything is cool. But the other one could be having a lot of fears. He might be experiencing a lot of uncomfortable feelings, uncomfortable emotions inside him, right? So it is very personal happening, what is happening inside of you. Okay, not necessarily the other person beside you witnessing the same situation will experience the same thing. Okay. I'll also give you example for you guys to understand more about traumas. Yeah, but before we get into that part, a very simple example about traumas. So, what usually we think about traumas is it is like a huge thing, something happening that is shaping our life. And of course, that is a trauma. But then these micro traumas that are happening on a very regular day-to-day basis, they form the foundation of who we are as a person today. Okay, uske liye I will be giving you an example for you to understand and start perceiving things from that perspective. ठीक है? A very famous example, or the very commonly used example that I usually give out to people, while they interact with me, is about an example wherein a child and their parent. Okay, so they have gone, or maybe they are having ice cream. Okay, but when the child demands the ice cream is not been given to the child. Now here, the parents' intention could be completely different. They might be operating from a lot of care, a lot of comfort, thinking about the well-being of the child. Maybe the child is not well, or maybe the child is too young to have ice cream. Maybe he'll get cold, right? So they are considering it from a perception of key. They want to keep the child safe. But how is the child perceiving that same situation? Okay, what the child is feeling, you know, I can't have it, but they can have it. It shows child its place of how small, how insignificant, and how its desires and how its aspiration doesn't matter. Okay, and that and when the child is witnessing the same thing, the child from inside withdraws itself. Okay, it feels maybe whatever I am desiring doesn't matter. How much ever I ask, even the smallest of thing, it is not going to be fulfilled because maybe what I'm desiring is wrong, or maybe what I desire, my desires are not important. Okay, and all sort of emotions that he might be going through as a child. Now just imagine situations like this happening on a very regular basis while you were growing up, while your brains were not like fully formed. Your prefer, what is that called, the cortex area, the prefrontal cortex area of your brain is not like fully formed. The time when you are like constantly absorbing things, like literally everything from the environment. right? And you are forming uh, the foundation of who you are as a person today. Now, just imagine the child grows up feeling, you know what I want, what my desires are not important. Okay, they will not be fulfilled. And today, as an adult, he might be struggling with a lot of things. Might be struggling with a feeling of maybe I'm not worthy enough. I don't deserve it, right? So when these things happen while you are growing up, now they literally, we literally form perceptions about our own self. We literally form perceptions about the world, right? And then whatever emotions, whatever feelings that makes us a child, the openness of a child, maybe the angriness, the rage, the fluidity of the child with his or her naked body, feeling of like open and liberated, those feelings are literally crashed down, right? And as a result, the child starts to lose its most authentic self. Okay, that is the second part that we will be covering. Okay, I did not move the screen, but yeah, so here we are. So now we will be covering a little bit about basic needs of a child, and then we will be understanding a little bit more about how we start losing our most authentic self, and then we will be transitioning into four different types of trauma responses. Okay. Um, Next, we will be talking a little bit about, before I get in that topic, I hope so, you guys understood a little bit about what is trauma and, how it impacts on an individual level and how the foundation of who we are as a person, how we are perceiving ourselves is formed long back. Okay. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about basic needs of a child and how it impacts us. Okay. Now, as a child, our primary needs of feeling of being loved, being cared, being having that feeling of safety and security and being accepted, being validated, especially from our caregivers, it is very important. Just give me a moment, guys. Okay. So yeah, we were talking about the basic needs of a child and how, as a child, the primary basic needs, that feeling of being loved, being appreciated, being validated, being accepted, and feeling safe, that feeling of safety and connection, um, you know, it has to be coming from the primary caregivers, especially from our parents. Okay, but when these needs that I just talked about, the basic needs, the primary needs of a child, if they are conditional, okay, it could be on based or on basis of how am I behaving, what are my achievements, or how well am I able to meet their expectations. Okay, if if it is conditional in any format, okay, we start to suppress certain part of ourselves that don't align with what they really want out of us. Okay, and when this suppression happens over a long period of time, we form like a protective layer around us. We form a sort of personas just to seek validation, just to seek appreciation, just to be have that feeling of being loved, coming in from our caregivers, coming in from our parents. Okay, and how does it happens? I would also want to give you guys a couple of examples so that you understand कि कैसी हो रही चीजें. Okay, तो यहाँ पे let's say you as a child, you love like drawing, you love to really paint. Okay, if as a child, let's say if a child loves drawing but the parents only praise them, only validates them when they get good grades, now the child might literally stop focusing on their art and start pushing themselves to be an excellent student instead. Okay, now a child might go through a lot of emotions or like sadness or like anger, it could be anything, right? And slowly the child is going to suppress that part of himself or that part of herself, who used to love art, who used to love drawing, who used to love painting, right? So this is one of the examples. um, Another example that I would want to give you all is, let's say a child feels a certain sort of emotions, like maybe he's sad, or maybe he's crying, or maybe he's getting angry, but then he's always been told by his parents that what, you have to be strong, what, you have to stop crying, you're a boy, boys don't cry. You have to be strong, right? So from there, they might learn to hide their own feelings. From there, they might learn to suppress their own feelings and not being able to open their self up. And today, as an adult, they might face issue of, you know what, they're not being able to express themselves very, freely in their relationships, or be it, with their friends in, let's say, in their workplace also. Okay. Next example that I would want to give you is about a child who's always saying yes, yes to literally, everything, just to try to keep their parents happy or their caregivers happy. Okay, because they believe that if they say yes to everything, what they are asking them to do, it will make them more lovable. Okay, and today they, as a child who has gone through, uh, you know trying to say yes to everything that is, being asked, so that they feel that they're more lovable to their caregivers or to their parents. Today they might try to be in the zone of perfectionism. Today they might face issues in terms of being perfect, or uh, uh, getting into the zone of people pleasing, trying to keep others need first than their own needs, right? And these were a couple of examples. I'm going to give you more examples also. Just give me a moment. Okay, तो यहाँ पे just a few relation of how it impacts the adulthood that I'm going to give you here. A child who tries to make everyone happy, the thing that I just discussed now, grows up and as an adult who gets into people pleasing. So people out there who are watching out this recording, who say that, you know what, sometimes I say yes to certain things that don't really want to do, but just because of कि मेरे friend को बुरा नहीं लगना चाहिए, or my parents might feel bad if I say them no, we try to do certain things. Okay, just to please them, just to make sure the relation, the connection has been maintained. We try to put others' need first before our own needs. Right. Second is a child who was only praised for achieving, for having a lot of achievements, might grow up as a adult, who's always seeking, perfectionism, who's always getting into the zone of overachieving. And then there's, even after achieving a lot of things, that person will feel a void inside them. Okay, they will always chase success to feel worthy. Ki, oh my god, I've achieved this, I should be worthy. But internally, if you ask a person who is the overachiever, he or she will always say that they feel a certain void inside them. Right, वो चीज़ अचीव करने के बाद भी they are not at peace, they are not at very genuinely happy about it. Then the next thing that comes to their mind is, next what is my next goal, what is my next step, what is my next achievement that I would want to do. They're never happy with what they're achieving, right? And then a child whose emotions were being dismissed, they were not being validated by their parents or by the caregivers, might grow up as a person who starts suppressing their own feelings. Okay, and making it very hard to connect with other people, especially, people whose emotions were not, whose emotions were being dismissed or not being validated from their parents. Such people face a lot of issues in their relationships, especially. Okay, relationships in terms of, romantic relationships, or be it in terms of friendships, or connecting with other people out there, right? Over time, these behaviors that I just talked about, they become layers around us that is actually covering my true authentic self, the authentic person that I am, right? And this is the most important thing, that we have to be discovering ki who I am genuinely, what is my uh, what do you say, authentic version, the raw version, right? And next thing, I will be discussing more about authentic self, and let's understand how do we start losing our authentic self. So how do we actually start losing our most authentic self? Authentic self is basically the raw, the authentic version of you before any sort of trauma, any sort of, trauma happened to you. Okay, so as a child, just imagine yourself as a child. We were born with a natural sense of freedom, a natural sense of curiosity, very fluid, very open, right? We used to express our emotions freely, whether it was joy, whether it was anger, or whether it was, sadness. Just, try imagining yourself as a child. I mean, literally crying out, literally dancing here and there, maybe naked without clothes, and getting angry, crying aloud, right? They literally express themselves without holding back, right? We don't really feel embarrassed about or being shameful about certain things like playing, dancing, or even running around naked. Right? That is the authentic version that we have, the purest form of who we are. Right? But these small repetitive experiences that we just discussed about, the layer that we're building around ourselves, that literally fades away our authenticity. Now, already I gave you a couple of examples. Bring it one of the examples back. Now imagine a scenario wherein, your parents are eating ice cream, but they refuse to give it to their child, saying that, you can't have it because, it might harm you. Or even if, even if the intention of the parents are good, the child doesn't understand it that way. Okay, the instead what child will feel is, what, they can have it, but I can't have it. Okay, and this is the message that has been sent to the child. You know what, my desires, my wants are not that important. Right? They may start to believe you whatever they ask for is wrong, or maybe they don't deserve it. Okay, so when these type of experiences happen on a very repetitive manner, the child begins to suppress the natural emotions. Okay, natural emotions like expressing anger while they feel something unfair. Okay, the openness or the fluidity about sharing the thoughts, asking question in terms of curiosity, it literally begins to shrink. Okay, the sense of liberation, the nature of a child, like carefree, being in joy and fully being themselves without even having any sort of shame, any sort of judgments coming in from people, it literally becomes dimmed. Okay, and the natural comfort of a person with their own bodies, like the freedom of running around without any shame, without feeling anything is right or wrong, that is being lost in this process. Okay, and as a child withdraws, they begin to lose touch with their own authentic self. They learn to hide their true emotions and their feelings and their desires, thinking that, what's the point, अगर मैं कुछ पूछ भी लूँ तो fulfill तो होने वाला ही नहीं है, right? There's no point into it, right? And this suppression creates pattern that we carry literally into our adulthoods. Okay, the child who once felt free and expressive becomes an adult who fear judgment today कि लोग क्या कहेंगे. Let's say if I do certain things, what will my friends say, what will society say, and what if I don't do it, then what my friends, my parents, my society is gonna say. Right? They struggle asking for help to people and they feel ashamed of their own needs. Right? These small moments of feeling insignificant, feeling small, or feeling unheard can have a lasting impact. Okay, the child who believed कि उनका desires जो है, it is not important, it doesn't matter. Right? When he grows up into an adult, he's going to question his own worth, कि what I am capable of, am I worthy enough or am I not? Right? So this confident, this vibrant, this open child gradually fades away. Right? And slowly we literally lose connection with their own authentic self, and it has been replaced by someone who struggles to be open, who cannot be true to their own self. Okay, so losing your authentic self is linked to trauma responses because these are the survival mechanisms like fight, freeze, flight, and fawn. They often require suppressing our own true feelings, our own true desires, right? Or our own identity just to stay safe and just so that the connection is maintained, right? And over time, the adaptation that we're doing ki I have to become this person, I have to be this, I have to be that in order for me to gain love, in order for me to gain that validation coming in from our parents, literally we start disconnecting from our own self of who we are truly as a person. Right? I hope so you guys are understanding the connection that we took you guys from first understanding about traumas and then make you guys understand about how we start losing our authentic self, right? And now the next topic that we will be covering is about trauma responses, right? So we will be covering all four trauma responses in this one single video. So here I'm going to talk a little bit about trauma responses, and then we will be getting into the each trauma response. Okay? So there are four major common, trauma responses that we give out, namely fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Okay, so basically these trauma responses are reactions. They are the coping mechanisms that we have developed in the childhood when we felt scared, when we felt unloved, or when we felt neglected. Okay, these are the reactions or coping mechanism. Please try to understand it. Right? These responses are are how our inner child learned to protect themselves when they felt unsafe. Okay, so basically it's for protecting you only. Okay, I'll give an example. Let's say they might have learned to fight back when they were hurt. So this is the fight response. They might run away to avoid conflict. Now, this is coming from flight response. Okay, or they might shut down emotionally. So, this is coming from freeze response. Or they try to please others to avoid trouble. Now, this is fawn response. Of course, we will be going into details, about the each trauma responses, but this is just an overview. Okay, so when we do the inner child healing process, it literally helps us understand that these responses that we're giving out, they are the ways that we learned to cope up while we were quite young. Okay, so it is a protective mechanisms against you only. Okay, so Abhi, just try to understand what people do is they try to change the today's you, adult you, but they don't understand ki from where it is coming from. It is coming from the inner child who has already learned कि if this is what I do, things are maintained well. अगर मैं ये करता हूँ, I am safe, the safety and connection is maintained, right? That's how our inner child has learned certain, coping mechanisms, right? And that is how we give responses today, right? So when I say, yeah, I want to change certain responses because it is not working out for me today, right? We will be understanding more examples like category by category of how things are not working out for us in the adulthood, right? So we have to go back and change that default setting, change that default mechanism that we have already learned as a child, and the brain has registered कि if I do this it works, if I do this the safety and the connection is maintained. वहाँ पे is the main thing that we'll have to work upon, and that is the process that we do inside the inner child healing process, right? So we go back, revisiting our own experiences, revisiting our own traumas, trying to understand what happened and how did we cope up with it, and releasing the stored traumas, and then moving on with the process of reconnecting to our true self, reconnecting to our authentic self, right? So now let's understand one by one about four different trauma responses that we have, and the first one that we will be checking out is about fight response. Right, the first response that we are going to look into talks about fight response, right? Before even getting into this part, what I want to make you guys understand is about two foundation things that we require as a human, right? Those two things are number one, safety, and number two, connection, right? So whatever responses that we learned while we were growing up as a child is based on these two things, the safety and the connection, working towards maintaining the safety and the connection, right? And let's get into the first type, which talks about the fight response, right? As kids, okay, if we were not getting the kind of attention, the kind of care, the kind of safety, the basic needs that we just talked about in this video a couple of minutes back, we might have learned to express anger or to act out in order to bring the focus onto them, you know, hoping to gain any sort of attention or ensuring the safety is maintained, right? So just imagine, go back and try to understand if as a child I was not given the things that I really wanted as a child, right? Getting into anger zone could be, an act wherein you're bringing back the attention to you. You know what? The attention of your parents or your caregiver come back to you, and the safety is maintained, the connection is maintained, right? So, if a child grew up in a home wherein their needs were ignored, wherein, you know, uh, whatever they wanted that is being ignored, they might start acting out or expressing anger as a way of getting noticed. Okay, this could be their way of saying that, you know what, I am here, I matter, I need help, right? The attention they received from fighting back, even if it is a negative attention. So, as a child, any attention is better than no attention. So we would be doing anything, literally anything, to get that attention from the caregivers, right? Even if it is a negative attention, right? Because in that way, the safety and the connection is being maintained and the child is not being neglected, right? So this response might show up as a person getting into defensive zone or getting angry when they are being criticized, or when they feel disrespected at work or in relationships, or in any sort of relation for that matter. Okay, I'll give you examples also for you to understand. So basically, when we talk about fight response, basically this is rooted into childhood as a coping mechanism of, you know, of a coping mechanism needing to fight back to protect themselves or to get the attention on themselves which they were lacking. Ki pehle to, the parents were not bothered, not concerned about this thing, but the child is feeling the need of, getting that attention, that getting that love and care. So getting into angry zone is basically a trick that they're using to get, getting back attention from their caregivers onto him or her. Okay, few examples for you to understand. Now, as an adult mother, you might react harshly to your child's mistakes or to, the behavior that the child is giving out. For example, if your child misbehaves, you might snap out at them or raise your voice immediately instead of calmly, addressing the issue, right? And if the same thing goes on happening again and again and again, you might lose that connection with your own child, right? Or let's say, a person is into a business. Okay, when the client is criticizing your work, okay, you may react with the anger, trying to defend yourself without taking the feedbacks very constructively. Now here, of course, it's going to cost you businessman. Of course, it's going to cost you the client, right? And that's how it is impacting your revenue. That's how it is impacting the amount of money that you're making. Okay, and let's say you're into a job and your manager gives you feedback, or let's say, any senior member is giving you feedback. Now you may just react angrily, or just try to justify your every action that you took. Now of course it's going to cost you your raise, your appraisal and your promotions, right? The thing that we learned in the childhood might have worked out for us back then as a child, right? But now as an adult, if we carry the same coping mechanism, the same survival mechanism, the same patterns, it is not working out for us today, right? And we have to go back and change the default settings that we have already learned while we were growing up. And when we go through the process of healing, we are actually changing this thing into a way that we really want. Okay, now let's move on to the second response, that is about flight response. The second response, okay, just give me a moment. Yeah, the second one that we're going to take up today talks about the flight response. Okay, so as a child or as children, if we were uncomfortable or or unsafe situations, if we were into any sort of uncomfortable or unsafe situations, whether it is like being into emotional neglect, any sort of conflict or instability, we might have learned to run away mentally or physically in order to protect ourselves and maintain some sort of some sense of safety and connection. Okay, I'll give you an example here. Let's say if a child grew up in an environment wherein a lot of conflict, a lot of fights and everything was happening all around, and they didn't feel emotionally supported, okay, they might have learned to avoid such situation that causes them stress. Okay, this could mean physically leaving the room, maybe just shutting out, going away from the parents and locking themselves up into a room, right? Or it could be emotionally withdrawing by shutting down. Okay, okay, the child might have learned that avoiding difficult situation kept them safe and the connection was maintained, right? Again, the same thing, it is what we learned as a child, the safety and connection key. If I just run away from the situation, if I just do not deal with it, run away from it, flee away from it, that means the safety and the connection has been maintained, right? So what my brain recorded key, yes it works, tick mark, yes it works. And the same thing that we are repeating on a everyday basis. Okay, how it is impacting us today? As an adult, the flight response might manifest as procrastination. Okay, that we are trying to just avoid things, we're not trying to do it. Okay, avoiding difficult conversation. Now, this is going to impact our relationships to a much extent, right? Or quitting things when things get a little hard, they will quit things. नहीं continue कर पाते चीजों को. Okay, um, people into this category now they might avoid conflict at work or in relationships, or just try to run away from the situation, from any situation that feels stressful or not comfortable. Okay. Now, this is a response that we learned as a child, that if I avoid conflict, if I run away from the conflict, if I do not face head on the difficult situation, that means the safety and the connection is maintained. That is what I've learned. And the same thing that I'm following today, right? Um, okay, one thing that I wanted to add here is one person can have multiple responses. It is not like I will be falling into just one category. You could be having a combination of responses that you give out based on different situations. Okay? Let's understand few examples in the flight response. Again, the same three categories that I've taken. As an adult mother, if your child is throwing tantrums at you, yelling, shouting, I want this only, I want that only, and all sort of tantrums, you may just walk away or shut down emotionally instead of addressing the behavior, instead of maybe, talking it out or maybe solving it out in a better way. What you do is you just walk away. You just shut down emotionally. Now, of course, that is impacting your relationship with your child, right? Basically, it is forming a disconnection, right? When I talk about in business, if you encounter any sort of financial issue, okay, you might avoid dealing with it at the moment. What you'll do is you'll just try to push it away. कि हो जाएगा ना, but time is gonna solve on its own, या देख लेंगे kind of behavior. It is going to cost you business, right? It is going to cost you money if you don't take immediate action towards the issue, right? In job also, let's say if you're asked to give any sort of presentation, or if you're asked to present anything, talk about certain things into a meeting or a presentation, you might avoid it out of fear. Okay, because what you have learned as a child is, if I run away from it, if I just go away, if I don't address it, that means the safety and the connection is maintained, and that is how it is impacting us today. Okay. And the next response that we're going to learn is about freeze response. So this is the third response, trauma response, that we will be discussing here. I will be giving you guys a couple of examples for you to understand much better. Okay, so as children, if we felt trapped in a situation where we did not have any sort of control over it, and we couldn't control of what is happening around us. It could be in a situation of abusive environment. It could be in situation of a neglectful environment. Okay, we might have frozen or numbed ourselves to cope up with the emotional overwhelm that we were going through. Okay, what this response does is it helps us temporarily block out the pain, block out any feeling, block out confusion, fear, making it easier for us to survive in that moment. Okay, so by freezing, the child could disconnect from the situation, could numb themselves to protect themselves from any sort of emotional or physical harm, right? Again, the sense of safety has been maintained here, right? So just come back to just two things, right? The safety and the connection, right? We're going to strive towards it. Okay. Now यहाँ पे the child has learned कि if I numb out, right, if I am just numbing my feelings, numbing the emotions, that means the safety has been maintained, and that is what we do today. Okay. So this is about freeze response. Okay, this might have not this actually might have not changed the situation at that point of time, but freezing was their way of staying safe without fighting or without running away. Okay, and in adulthood this may show up as the feeling of being paralyzed. होता है ना कभी कभी, you let's say you have or maybe a couple of challenges in front of you and you're not able to see anything, maybe not able to act on certain things, right? So you are not being able to make any sort of decisions at work, or maybe you're shutting yourself down emotionally, especially in relationship. This happens a lot. And then that feeling of, oh, I'm stuck, nothing is working out for me, that is also coming from the freeze response. Okay. And a lot of us are into functional freeze response. ठीक है, होता है क्या है, we tend to do things, but जो important चीज़ें है हमारे लिए, we tend to put it in the last moment कि कर लेंगे, right? So again, this is a coping mechanism that we had learned as a child. Okay, while we were growing up, if I do this, the safety and the connection has been maintained. Maybe I'm emotionally a little bit. I'm feeling better, and the safety, the survival is being maintained. So that is how we have learned it, and that is the response that we give out today as well. Okay, and of course the responses that we learned in the childhood is no longer working out for us. Okay, it is actually creating hurdles for us, and it is making us feel stuck into our life and not being able is actually, kind of holding us back, not being able to tap into our full potential because of all these the survival responses that we get into. Okay, again a couple of examples. Oh, one second, where did that go? Hmm. Yes. um Just give me a moment. I think I've misplaced the slide. This was fight, flight, freeze. Just give me a moment. I'll just quickly check in the response and allow me a moment. Okay. So here are the few examples of the freeze response that we give out. Again, the same examples that I've taken is one is, as an adult mother, if your child is upset or your child is crying, sorry, you may not know how to respond, and you end up withdrawing your shutting yourself emotionally, and then it leads to disconnect between you and your child. It is impacting your child, the relationship, the bond that you have with your child, right? The second one, when you talk about business, let's say a situation wherein you are going through some sort of crisis, or a major decision, you might just freeze, you might just numb out. You know you're not able to make any actions, or you're not able to decide what I'm supposed to do, right? You just freeze out at that moment, just that you're not feeling what is happening around you, right? And third one is when we talk about a job, for example, when you have been given a complex task. Okay, you may feel overwhelmed. Okay, or maybe you will not be able to start it only, or even if you start, you might not be able to complete it. Okay, so that happens because you go into that numbness, you go into that freeze zone. You're like completely disassociated from what is happening around you. You're like completely numbed out because you don't want to feel about the things happening around you. Because by doing so, the child has learned to maintain the safety, to maintain the connection, the survival thing, right? And that's how we have learned this response, which talks about freeze. Now, the last one that we will be talking about, and literally a lot of us fall into this category of fawning, right? And I'm going to just take you there. Okay, so this is the last trauma response that we're going to see today, which is the fawning response. And I am very sure that it is going to relate with a lot of y'all. Okay, so if you're a person who feels, I always tend to keep others' need before my own needs. I tend to, and of course, I feel guilty also about it afterwards. होने के बाद, why I did this, हमेशा यही होता है कि you're not prioritizing your own self, and then you end up prioritizing the other person just to please them, just to maintain the connection that you have with them. ठीक है? Let's understand here a little bit in details about the fawn response. Now, as a child, if we felt that the love, the attention, what we were supposed to get from our parents unconditionally were actually conditional. Okay, if that love, if that attention was conditional in any manner, we learned to please others by behaving the way that they wanted. Okay, even if that meant ignoring your own needs, ignoring your own desires. Okay, for example, if a child grew up in a home wherein the parents were like always busy 24/7, both the parents were working, हमेशा कुछ ना कुछ होता है, or the mom was busy with the household chores and the in-laws, every time she was just busy or emotionally unavailable. Okay, then the child might have learned to be the perfect child. Okay, never troubling, never demanding anything, never causing any trouble, always helping out and acting more mature than their age in the hopes of receiving that love, in the hopes of receiving that attention, uh, or just to ensure the safety and connection is maintained. So, here as a child, because you did not get that love, because you did not get that attention, or that validation, or it was conditional in any manner, you tend to become that good person, the good girl or the good child syndrome. Okay, you are the child who is very good at mature, handling everything, handling their younger siblings, uh, trying to help out parents with their work, everything. They are doing this, they're just trying to be that perfect child in hopes of receiving that love, in hopes of receiving that attention that they're getting from their parents. Okay, so when we talk about the adulthood, this shows up as constantly trying to please other at their work. It could be in terms of relationship as well, or in social situations. And of course, it leads to burnout, because this is something that um, you are not willing to do like 100%, but then you would want to do it, because to ensure that the safety and the connection is being maintained, right? And let's move on to certain examples. So again, when I talk about the fawn response, the behavior is literally rooted into the belief that, for people, for parents, or for caregivers to love me or accept me, I have to do something extra, right? And to do something extra, they tend to be that mature child. They tend to be that child who's taking care of the siblings. They tend to be that child who's taking care of the home, trying to just please everyone around, just to get that love, just to get that attention from the caregivers, even if it is at their own expense. Okay? Let's understand few examples here about the fawn response. So as the adult mother, okay, you might give in to your child's demands. कि जो भी child को चाहिए, you're trying to just fulfill it just to keep them happy. Okay, when we talk about it in a business, here you might be agreeing to every request or everything that your client brings up, or maybe you're just trying to take up a lot of projects even when it stretches you to the thin. Okay, and then when we talk about the job, just imagine a situation wherein you're just always saying yes to everything, be it that extra project, or be it extra work, be it that presentation, it could be anything. So the crux of when we talk about the fawn response is about doing certain things that you do not want to, in order to make sure the connection and the safety is maintained with that person. Okay, you might also feel guilty after doing that thing. Okay, so this was the last response that we just talked about, which is the fawn response. Okay, now let's understand how we can actually work on it. Okay. So when we talk about the inner child work or the trauma release process, how it is going to help you, right? Firstly, we will be deep diving into your patterns, because these patterns, the patterns or the behaviors that you're giving out today, it is not working out for you, and it is coming from uh, your childhood, wherein your inner child has learned to cope up, or has learned a survival mechanism in a way to maintain the safety and connection at that point of time, right? But it is not working out for you today. So the first step is, of course, going down and exploring more about your patterns and more about from where the traumas or the responses that you're giving out originates from. Okay, and the second step is about releasing those traumas. Now here, understand one thing. Knowing certain aspects about, this is who I am, and this is what I do, and this is how I do it, and these are the common things, this is the trauma response that I give out. Having understanding about these things is a good thing, right? You are getting more about aware about yourself is a good thing. But please understand that just knowing, by just having awareness about certain things of how it is working on you, and how you're giving out responses and certain things around traumas, is not healing, right? Getting awareness is not healing. Healing ke liye you have to go through the process of healing, right? And also one more pointer that I wanted to add here is about, a lot of people get into thought work and mindset work and subconscious work and all those things, and of course those things are powerful, but please understand, your traumas are stored inside your body, right? So it is very important for you to include your body also while you're doing any sort of work, right? Because everything is stored here, I mean literally inside your body, and your body remembers everything, all the good, all the bad, all the past experiences are already stored in the body, right? Basically, literally a database is already stored of good, bad, everything, right? So when we talk about releasing the traumas, it has to include the body also, because trauma is stored in the body, right? So यहाँ पे we will be going deep diving into your feelings and your traumas, which are no longer supporting you, which are actually holding you back, right? So we will be releasing those traumas from the body. right? And the last is reconnecting with your authentic self. Now यहाँ पे reconnecting with your authentic self is very important, because होता क्या है, when the splits happen, that means when we undergo certain sort of traumas or certain foundations that are already being formed while we are growing up, so there are splits that are formed, right? Just imagine this is my authentic self. Now I try to become that another person that is being accepted by my parents. Maybe I'll become that people pleaser version, maybe I'll become that perfectionist or something, right? Now the authentic self, the authentic version, that who I am as a person, that is being lost here. So when we do this inner child healing process, firstly, releasing what is already stored, and then we actually integrate the parts of you that you have lost, when this trauma happened, right? So then we integrate your authentic self, the part of original, the raw version of you, right? So basically this is the process of healing that you will be going through. One is removing everything, removing patterns, removing belief system, removing the traumas, releasing it. That is step number one, creating space inside your body to actually inject certain new things that you would want to. And then connecting with your own self, the authentic self, I would say.